This is the Power Producers Podcast, where we are refining and redefining the sales game.
Rule number one is you have to believe in yourself. You're the only one who doesn't think you belong in this appointment. The prospect has already validated your existence by scheduling time with you. Get it through your head you belong here, go in there, crush it, and close the deal.
A place where sales professionals can come to learn from other sales professionals and thought leaders that have mastered their craft.
The difference between a good salesperson and a best-in-class salesperson is only 2 minutes. By spending an extra 2 minutes on what you might think is a mundane task in the sales game, you separate yourselves from the pack, you grow your book of business, you close more deals, and you retain your accounts.
As well as their peers who are still striving for perfection to achieve their why.
I have a wife and 4 kids. Failure is not an option.
Real sales professionals, real stories, real results. Are you ready to feel the power?
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Power Producers Podcast, where we are refining and redefining the sales game. One of the ways we do that is we bring resources and solutions that we use in our agency here at Florida Risk Partners to drive new opportunities. And I've got Dylan Jordan from Connected Risk Solutions with me today, and we're going to talk about what they're doing specifically with some of the healthcare and medical related risks. So I'm not going to waste any more time introducing this guy. We're going to get cranking. What's up, Dylan?
What's up, brother? I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So before we get too much into the weeds of what you guys are doing as a company, why don't you give everybody a little bit about your background and sort of how you got into the role you're in today?
Sure. Well, I am, like most people, right, stumbled into it. I was at a small private school up here in Pennsylvania, right outside of Philadelphia, and went into intern at a carrier. And while I was in the waiting room getting ready for the interview, got passed over to, or I saw one of my buddies that I used to bartend with, and he was at a sister company, a wholesaler. So went over there as an intern, and right out of the gate, I started to realize that this industry, the whole, just insurance overall, but I love the wholesale side. The industry overall is a shut up and work kind of industry. No one cares about your age, your sex, your anything. It's, okay, we got numbers to meet. Can you meet them? And that fit my lifestyle so much. Me and my wife met real young in high school, dated for about a year before I was like, hey, I want to have just a crazy amount of kids and I want to go provide for our family. She said, same, and I want to stay home. And so I knew it was, I needed to be in a shut up and work kind of industry. To start on the wholesale side there, made a jump to the retail side and sold as a retailer for about 2.5 years. And then came back to the wholesale side. But the whole time it's been nothing but medical, social services, life sciences, all that kind of stuff.
So the one thing I heard is you wanted to get married and have a bunch of kids as quick as possible. How many kids you guys have?
We have 4 under 5 right now, and we'll be pregnant again probably in March or something, somewhere around there.
4 under 5 is a lot, man. I got 4, but they are definitely spread out. If I had it all to do over again, I wouldn't change anything because I wouldn't have the same 4 kids. But if I were going to go through it, could have the same 4, I'd rather have 4 of them under 5 than have 21, 17, 12, and 10.
They're psychos, man. All of them are. But I mean, like you said, they got their personalities. It's a blast. It's a lot of screeching because I got 3 girls, and me and my son sometimes just escape and go fish or something like that. But it's a blessing, man. It really is.
So talk a little bit about your role now. What are you doing? And what do you guys specialize in? And what are you looking for from agents?
Yeah, I'm an advisor at Connected Risk, which is just our term for producer. So I go out, make relationships, get the business in the door, and then work high-level strategy on account-specific overall relationship with the agency, and larger renewals. We get heavy in the weeds and the data, the analytics, what's going on with the industry, and keeping up with that. So I spend most of my day just keeping an eye on some of the big renewals that come up, make sure we're following our process and our sales cycle, make sure we're making the insured, putting them in a position where they're comfortable. There's no surprises. They know what's going on for the renewal, so it's nice and seamless. And then I get to talk to buddies like you, where it's, I do insurance in the med mal space. You might do a little bit. Should we be buddies?
Yeah, so talk a little bit about that, because you guys are pretty you're pretty honed in on what it is that you do. I mean,
Yeah,
up until you and I met, pretty much if it didn't fit in Chubb's appetite, I wasn't going to waste my time with it,
sure.
honestly, from a life sciences standpoint. But it seems like you got a pretty broad appetite, quite a few markets that you can go to, and you're not limited to just med mal or professional liability. You have a whole suite of products that y'all
Yeah.
write that you can help agents with.
Yeah, I mean, and any good producer will tell you about niching, right? And some of the really good ones will tell you about micro niching. And what do you do really well and don't get, put the blinders on and don't get caught up in the sexiness of maybe there's a large property schedule. That could be big premium. At Connected Risk, we really say if you can do it really good, stay in your lane and focus up in that lane. So what I do mainly is the GLPL excess. Sometimes if it's a part of a package on the admitted side, I get slapped in property and auto. But when it comes to something like cyber, can I place it? Sure. But am I an expert in it where I could talk the talk, put me up against anybody? No. And so we have a cyber team for that. When it comes to management lines or miscellaneous, we got a team for that. And we just dish it back and forth to each other because we want to make sure that when I get a submission, my close rate's super high because I know what I'm doing, no matter who I'm up against or what kind of weirdness comes up against it. I know the carriers. I got the best relationships I could possibly have with them. And it all comes from focusing in GLPO access in these spaces. I'm confident against anybody.
So, what are you guys seeing in the marketplace right now? Obviously, it's been kind of a freak show across the board. Is the
Yeah.
stuff that you're seeing in the healthcare side and med tech side of the house tracking with
Mm.
everything else, or is it not? I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the med mal side is really down to the state. Frankly, it's been an unprofitable line for every carrier that's been in it since I think '06. They've been losing money combined ratio wise. But the worst part is the legislation's not helping. It's going in the opposite direction. So I do a lot of business in Florida in the southeast. I do some work up in the northwest. I do a lot obviously around Philadelphia, could living around here. And these jurisdictions are just making it tougher and tougher on companies in the med mal side. Like Philadelphia had the jurisdiction shopping switch at the beginning of this year. And Philadelphia County, just the county itself, is the number 2 judicial hellhole in the US behind Georgia being number 1.
I was gonna say Atlanta's got to be tops.
Yep, Georgia's it, man. And but that Philadelphia County with this jurisdiction shopping change in the beginning of the year, if you can prove 0.5% of your operations go through Philadelphia County, the claimant can bring the suit within Philadelphia County. And so with it being the number 2 worst, obviously giant payouts, but now it's backlogged like crazy. People are being pushed into settlements. And now it was already about a year and a half delay because of COVID still with the courts. Now Philadelphia County is more like 2 years behind, 2.5 years. It's crazy. So in those states, rates are going up. And they have to because we're already losing money. And now jurisdiction or the legislation's making it worse and worse.
Well, and I think that's typically the way that it works until it gets better. I mean, and that's not a
Mm-hmm.
smart remark. I mean, we're dealing with our fair share of that in Florida right now with what we're
Yep.
seeing on assignment of benefits and capping attorneys' fees and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've made the decisions to do the things that we need to do to improve it, but we're still 3
Mm-hmm.
to 4 years away
Yeah.
from reaping the benefits of the things we're doing today. And that's if nothing else major happens in the form of a hurricane or otherwise.
Yeah, and that latest bill that they passed in Florida, a lot of it excluded the med mal stuff. There was a new precedent set where you can kind of pick apart the expert witness on the claimant side mid trial before you couldn't do it until the end of the trial. And you spend all these expenses to get to the end, and then you say, "Wait a minute, this guy's a schmuck," and you got to go back, and it shoots up the expense costs. They changed that around, which is helpful. But yeah, I got a radiology group down in Florida who had some losses. They weren't strong, and they keep adding people. But outside of all that, the state was taking a 7.5% increase as it was with that carrier. So add everything else on top, it was like a 32% increase. But when we delivered the renewal, we did our marketing analysis, we talked to all the people, the who's who. The response was, yeah, makes sense. Because there's only so much you could do.
So what does the average account look like that you're working on that you see pass through to your underwriters? When you're out shaking hands, kissing babies, making the relationships,
Right.
bringing new agency relationships in. What's a big win for you? What do you consider like just in and out? If I could, because I'm a big believer that again, to what you said before, stay in your lane. If you know what you're doing,
Right.
stay in your lane. But I'm a big believer that if you can consistently hit singles every single time you get up to
Yep.
the plate, you don't need to swing for the fence every time you get up. Right?
Yeah.
Keep hitting singles and you're going to produce runs and eventually
That's
win
it.
that way, right? So I'm not interested in what's the greatest account. We could talk about that, but I mean,
Sure.
my goal here is there's a lot of agencies out there that have relationships for medical malpractice and other things. A lot of the times,
Right.
I mean, from a carrier perspective, Nationwide is a great example. Nationwide loves writing doctors' offices,
Yep.
dentists, things like that, but you're not going to get the professional liability for them.
Right.
You have to go to somewhere else to do that. And I think a lot of agents just turned a blind eye to it because there's quite a few direct writers that go out
Sure.
or association programs. So talk a little bit about, what it is that you really like. What's a bread and butter submission look like for you and go from there.
Yeah, I mean, my book has $150 medical student in there in premium. And I've worked on setting up captives for a group of conglomerate urgent cares across the United States. So my book runs the gamut. I shoot for at least one whale every quarter, and a whale to me is over 750 in premium. 750,000 in premium. But the buying requests I've gotten in the past few weeks have been a lot of $5,000, $10,000 medi spas. There's been a bunch of new venture medi spas coming out of the run right now. But across the board, in kind of my buckets, when it comes to the medical side, for a lot of the agencies that may not specialize in the medical malpractice side, but they have a buddy who's a head doc at a group or something along those lines, or their brothers or something.
Right.
They just never felt like they could go in there and have the educated conversation. I work as that extension for so many agents across the US where, they crush real estate. They're really good at construction. I have some opportunities, but I've never really delved into them because I don't know the medical malpractice side, especially because on our side, we get paid wholesale rates for the commission. So I pay you the same amount you'd get if you went direct anyway. So it ends up being a good extension there for them, and some offices that have the medical malpractice experience, but they don't have the staffing bandwidth to do a thorough marketing across the board and work with them throughout the midterm changes that come with it, because physician groups have a bunch of stuff going on. Same with hospitals in the same light. And then social services, I really love the foster care stuff. And some of the social services that get a little deeper into the services than your admitted folks will play in. I have some admitted carriers that'll package things together, but most people have the Philadelphias, right? Some of them have the Cincinnatis, the selectives, but all of them have that little thing that they're not comfortable with. And some of my best wins have been either carving out those exposures, so keep everything else with Philadelphia. I'll take the stuff that they don't like, or moving the whole program, especially when they start getting into some stuff like refugee services or foster care operations. Like I said,
What about
those
rehab?
I love rehab, and they're getting beat up right now because the admitted marketplace is running away as fast as possible and finding reasons to. I had a few where I won't name carriers or anything, but profitable for over 10 years on the account. There was one loss, and it was under $100,000. I still think it was 90 something, and they non-renewed due to losses. It's like, no, you're getting out. You don't want to do it anymore, and that's fine. But
Call it what it is,
it makes
though.
it tough.
Don't.
Right. Due to losses, you made $300,000-$400,000 off this account in profit easily.
Yeah, we're seeing it right now, man. Where it's and it's
a lot in Florida.
Not in the segment that you're in per se, but especially with auto. I was looking at a renewal for one of my clients this morning that's mid-February that we're getting wrapped up, and the carrier's trying to push like a 20-25% increase on auto rate on them. And it's like, hold on a second. You've had this account for like 5 or 6 years, and the only amount of money you've spent was to replace like 6 or 7 windshields.
Right.
That's it in 5 or 6 years. And I mean, we're not talking about, look, it's not like a massive fleet, but it's 70 grand in premium.
Yeah. And that's, it gets me fired up. And especially right now, in terms of marketplace update, with social services, you have some carriers out there that undercut the market like crazy, and now they're trying to rectify it, like to the tune that I probably could have been an actuary for them, and that's not my jive. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But they get a reason to increase, and taking 20, 30, 40% increases and then tripling the retention on top of it and cutting out coverage. And it's like there's sometimes where that's substantiated. I get that. And one of my more recent wins is the $1.7 million social service. I did a lot of foster care, but they work with juvenile detention kids, everything like that. And it's like they were making money hand over fist on this account, but they were so below the market, and they felt like they needed to start taking it up a notch. And I won the account on BOR by looking at it and say, there's no way this renewal is being handled right by your current wholesaler, because none of this makes sense. And they never had any other quote option alternatives for the past 4 years, even with these increases. I said that I could do a better job on this. And we did. We restructured the whole thing, had 7 different quote options for the insured to choose through. And even with them taking another 40% increase because they had 2 death claims on it, even with having another 40% increase, they still said it was the best renewal they've had in damn near a decade. It's crazy. That's why you got to fight, though. Those are my favorite wins.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because I got a lot of contacts through my ecosystem that are Midwest and even up in New York, where they've got a lot of local mutuals and regional carriers and stuff. And you'll see that they'll end up playing on a lot of these social services accounts. Whereas down here, man, it's like, boom, right out of the box, it's immediately going to ENS. Like there's not even a question other than Philly. And I've always kind of felt like Philadelphia is an admitted market with an ENS appetite. It's like,
that's a great way to put it. Yeah. Yeah, they're nitpicky. They really are, and they'll do the same.
But if you
thing
can find
renewals.
if you can find what they like,
great product.
You're not going to beat coverage, probably not going to beat the price.
Yeah,
So,
it's like a lot of the admitted package folks. Like we represent Guide One. It's the same thing. If you're in the box, great program, great setup. But if you're not in the box or you're a little bit out of the box, it just doesn't match.
What else are you guys writing? Because the social services thing was new to me, man. You got my wheels spinning a million miles an hour now. And I'll be honest with you, of all of the classes of business, people reach out and say, hey, where would you go with this? Where would you go with that? That's number one.
Yeah,
by a landslide.
Because there's so many different things that they do anymore. You know what I mean? So social services becomes this crazy blanket term that, I mean, I have some carriers that force social services under their allied healthcare product, which doesn't make any sense. But it just goes to show the collectivism of it all. But yeah, I love the foster adoption care, the drug alcohol rehabs. I do a lot of those too. I just did an Easter Seals where we took that away from Philadelphia and saved them about 16, 17%, something around there. So I'll do some of those admitted packages as well, where I'll compete with Philadelphia. Did a Meals on Wheels and a YMCA recently too. But it's hard to nail it down, right? Because social services means a million different things anymore. But when it comes to ENS, the foster adoption care, the drug alcohol rehab, anything with ICE contracts or the refugee work that's going on right now with immigration and everything, those are really tough to place, and they're coming out more and more frequently. And the main carriers in those spaces are turned upside down. And so what they used to have in a sweet deal is changing substantially. I just won another BOR on a mainly foster care risk in the Carolinas, and they had a primary carrier and an excess carrier who was the same. Then they had another layer of excess over top. Now, in the excess layers, they thought that they had coverage for their North Carolina, South Carolina, and abuse all throughout the excess. Turns out they had a really tall tower just covering North Carolina. No South Carolina stuff, which was like 40% of what they do, and no abuse in the excess, which made them completely non-compliant with their state contracts.
Was it because it was specifically excluded, or it was just missed somehow?
Because they had about $2.5 million in losses, all attributed to these same South Carolina locations. But to the insured's credit, they said, hey, we can't staff them. We can't get the people here. So they voluntarily turned over their license to the state. You take away those locations, loss runs would have read $40,000, 2.5 down to 40, which one tells me the narrative was not pitched correctly. on the
I
other
was going to
side.
say, man, somebody had a bad submission with no narrative or
No
anything on
narrative.
what
And
was going on.
that's an incredible story. What are you trying to do to get rid of your losses? Well, we got rid of almost all of them by getting rid of these locations. There's
Yeah.
still a tail exposure to it. You could still get sued later on, sure. But what it did was they went from 200,000 to 750,000 in premium. Is still with those exclusions. South Carolina's retention went from 100K to 750K on the primary. So shot up,
And
increased the
mind you,
premium.
on less revenue because they closed locations in order to
Yep.
make it happen.
Yep. And then and less staff too. That's a bigger rating bases. And then in the excess, you don't have coverage for South Carolina, the worst operations, or abuse, one of the biggest things you need for a social service in this space. So once we told the insured that, they had, a little panic attack, but signed the BORs, and now we're breaking it down and reconstructing it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you're probably in an interesting part of the industry because the segment that you're playing in is not straightforward. It's not the easiest, but it's one that if any agent listening to this were to sit down and think for 5 minutes, they probably could rattle off the names of 5 different accounts
Right.
that they could bring to you that are in that space that they've never touched because they just don't know it and don't understand it. So
Right.
that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on, man, is I feel like, just based on the experiences we've had with you in my agency thus far, which by the way, I will go ahead and put this out there. Dylan had put together a really good program for me on an account that was a referral in, and I'm basically just airing this because I want people to understand that we don't just get on a podcast and say we do things. We stand behind what we say we're going to do. And I'll never be a whore for premium ever. If somebody's moral compass is off, if I get a sniff that they're being dishonest with me or that they're going to be somebody that's going to cause me potential issues down the road, I would much rather cut bait on the front end. So, we've that's one that I felt like it actually was closed and it was 100% on me, but walked away from it. Had to tell my man that I was taking away premium from him that I told him he was getting. So we're going to make up for it and get it for him. But, part of it too is when you're out there, when you don't understand these things, you can at least understand and read people, right?
Yeah.
If you don't understand the physical risks, that's fine. If you don't understand environmental or the legal and professional and all of the other stuff that goes into it, that's okay. You can get help to find that. But when you're dealing with people who aren't going to be forthright, who aren't going to be, somebody that you want to associate yourself with, what you're really doing is you're not making money. You're diminishing your value proposition to everybody else in your book of business when you bring that person in.
I do. It's the same thing with some agents I work with. I've had it where I get to a point where it's like, you use me to just block some markets for your convenience, or your submissions are never thorough. You're really just playing. You know what I mean?
It's a dangerous game too, man, because there's only so many markets that are going to entertain the types of things you're seeing. And I think that's one of the biggest issues agents have. They don't understand how much damage they're doing to both theirs and their prospect or client's reputation in the underwriting community.
Absolutely.
When they do that. I've got an account right now that I'm going to renew. I've had the account for a few years. It renews next month, and it's basically already done. But I sent an email over to the business owner this morning and said, "Hey, just want to touch base with you. Renewal's pretty much wrapped up. We're going to leave it with the carrier it's with. Here's the reasons why. Not really much of a price change there, but they're wanting to take some rate on the autos. So I've pushed back. I noticed that they still haven't put you in their preferred company when you should be because of loss history and all of this other stuff. But we should be wrapped up by the end of the week, and I'll be back in touch with you to let you know what's going on." The first year that I engaged with that account 5 or 6 years ago, they wanted me to give them a full-blown marketing summary showing them everywhere that I went, what the quotes were, why they declined if they declined, why the quotes were different if they were material. And over the course of time, they understand and trust that I know what I'm doing at this point. Right. They know that if I say, "Hey, this is why you need to stay with this carrier." Last year, he wanted to get a little bit cute with me and say, well, you can send me my loss runs and I'll just do the market diligence for myself. I said, you're more than welcome to do that. But we did market it this year because it was I think it may have been their 4th year. And we usually go every 3rd year we market. But we did market it last year because of rate increases. And I told him, I said, you're going to find out you're blocked everywhere. And the other thing you're going to find out is I have you with the only carrier that I know of that's willing to give you the endorsements for the kind of work you're doing. So if you want to waste your time, that's fine. But we've already been through this exercise. The client and the prospect don't understand. They think that because they have money, somebody wants to sell them insurance. That's not always the case.
It's a great way to put it. No, not at all. Not at all. There's so much that goes into it. And when the account's been seen by underwriters so often, year after year, they're not shy about it. They'll put it in the email or they'll tell you on the phone, I've declined this 3 years in a row. That's why when we have to go out and they may have declined a year or two back because of appetite, I'll put it in the email. Listen, if your appetite has changed, let's talk about it. If not, shut it down. Don't spend a single second on this because their time's so valuable. But at the same time, appetites can change so often, especially in stuff like the social services or med mal. It's like, hey, you might like this now. I don't know. If you don't, get rid of it. You got a pile and you want to move people to the top of it. And I respect that. And that's what helps us get our submissions up to the top. My underwriters know I'm never wasting your time. If it's a real opportunity, I'm going to let you know. You're going to get a phone call. We're going to talk about it. But if it's just a flyby, it's a soft marketing, just in case somebody does something shifty, you're also going to know. And I'm not going to have you waste a second.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's the easiest way to do business, man. There's just so many games that happen in our industry. It just, I don't know. To me, it's real simple. Just do what you're supposed to do when you're supposed to do it. Be honest. I mean, basic stuff, you know?
Yeah. Hustle, communicate. That's all it is. It's all it comes down to.
100%, man. 100%. So what have we missed?
Yeah. We talked a little bit about the life sciences, right? And if there's a market update for that, I haven't seen much increases across the board. If anything, I'm seeing some decreases and some carriers getting back in who might be able to package in auto, property, and stuff like that, who wouldn't before. Like I had a group that was doing all of the medical supplies in Lee County and Sarasota County down in Florida. And so that wasn't much of an admitted play for a long time. And I'll drop the name because I respect him. Intact came in and could do the GLPL and was able to do the auto and property. And when the agent told me that, I'm like, then you take that deal when you run. I know it kicks me out, but at the same time, you got to do what's best for the insured. And that's a crazy deal. So if anything, I see that side softening a little bit. And a lot of what I'm doing.
That's the right answer for you because you're in a no-lose situation anyhow. If they really had the quote, then you gave them really good advice. But if they were just trying to play you, you got rid of somebody who was trying to give you a bunch of BS about something that they had that they really didn't.
Right. And I told them, give me a shot next year. They said, we absolutely will, in case Intact changes their mind again. But it was a great deal for them. We're still on the high excess, so we can still talk to them about it all the time. But yeah, a lot of stuff I'm doing on the life science side typically has some losses. Maybe it's the Delta 8, maybe it's the semaglutide, the weight loss drug that everyone's talking about right now. Those are getting trickier and trickier. The FDA is starting to sniff around more and more. We're finding more symptoms that are kind of breaking off of it. So the non-FDA
you can go online and get some of those drugs on over the internet consultation. It's crazy.
It's all off label and stuff like that. The uses at least, and carriers are slapping on exclusions as quick as they possibly can. So I'm working with some. That's the most E&S stuff I'm probably doing. Because if it's admitted with Chubb, Hartford, people that you guys can access and have really strong relationships with. So I'll find it, or like a heating cooling product. I had one where it's a heating cooling product. They left it on too long and they had to get their leg amputated for $200,000. I asked the agent, can you tell me more details about it? She said that, but it was user error. I'm like, his leg was amputated. I think it was a little more than just user error.
Yeah, user error in that they didn't know how to turn the thing
I
off.
guess, but either way, we got it with a nice home, and they're 3 years in with them, and it was good. But
I
that
had
was
that
the
happen
funniest
one
one.
time. I had that happen. It wasn't my account. It was another agent at the agency I was at.
Hmm.
And it was that agent's dog. They took him, they had a miniature
Oh,
pinscher, and they
jeez.
took her to the vet because she'd eaten a palm nut, and they were concerned that it was going to
Wow.
get stuck and kill her. And so they went and they did the surgery and they extracted it. And apparently when they go through that kind of surgery, they lose some body heat. So they keep them on a warming plate long enough to get
Mm.
their. Somebody walked off and left the dog on the
Oh,
warming plate.
jeez.
Comes in the next day to a cooked dog and has to
To
call
a
my
cook
friend
dog.
who I worked with. And this is
Jeez.
even crazier, man. We insured the vet at the
That's
agency,
wild.
and the agency principal told the producer that if you file a claim against our insured, I'm going to terminate you. It's like,
Yeah, what? That's wild.
it's like, let me get
Yeah.
out of here, man.
This
So
insurance
anyhow,
world, man, it's crazy. It really is.
it is crazy. Well, what else do we need to bring up before I let you go, my man? Other than I want people to know how to get a hold of you, where to find you, how do they determine whether or not they're going to be a good fit for you, and vice versa?
Yeah, I think the staying in the lane thing is one part of it, but a lot of my peers, I won't say competitors, because I'm friends with a lot of people in this wholesale space, and they're really good at their jobs. But a lot of them will specialize in healthcare and cyber and professional lines and this and that and this and that. There's some teams out there that'll write an accountant and an attorney and then a hospital and then a doc group. You know what I mean? And do a
Yeah, and then
lot
a
of lines of coverage for a
land
lot.
clearing company, car wash. I mean,
Right. You're specializing in insurance, is what you're telling me. And that doesn't really make sense. So that's the one thing I pride myself on is don't come to me, with a monoline auto submission. I'm not going to be able to help you there. Don't come to me with a monoline property or something along those lines. If you come to me with the GLPO excess and the things we were talking about, I don't care who's on the other side. I don't care if you're competing on it. If you have it, I'm going to be vicious. I got kids to feed and I'm having a bunch more. So I need to be really good at my job, and I got to get after it.
how do they find you?
You can find me. I'm on LinkedIn fairly actively. I'm not a big social media guy, but LinkedIn is something I'm on a decent amount. And then all that contact information, and then any kind of association event, I'm probably boots on the ground there too.
There you go. I think we've killed it, man. I don't know if there's
Yeah.
anything else we can talk about at this point. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up. But listen, if
Yeah,
you
man.
have any kind of an account in social services, if that's a practice that you're looking to specialize in, medical technology, life sciences, all of that kind of stuff, even if he won't write it, ask Dylan first. What I've learned from this conversation is my guy is writing stuff I didn't even know he would write. I would have never thought to come to you for the social services stuff. And we actually have a decent chunk of that in our book of business. So while we were talking, I'm emailing or messaging producers to make sure they
Yeah.
reach out to you at renewal with those things. But make sure you check him out. If nothing else, connect with him online. And when the time comes, you'll remember him. I can promise you that. I appreciate you jumping on today, man. I'm going to bring you on to our Killing commercial call very, very soon and have you come talk to the private community. And then also maybe have you come in if there's something that you want to, like a topic that you can go for an hour on specifically on a presentation, bring you into one of my next quarterly boot camps to really get you guys on the map and help you show these agents where they can go with this stuff. Because I have a feeling there's agencies that just simply aren't writing business because they don't think they have a home.
That's it. I got a whole agency that wrote personal lines insurance for all these dentists and docs. They were petrified of the med mal, and we talked to them and we brought them all over. It's a
That's
solid
awesome.
win.
That's awesome. Well, I appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to jump on today, my man, and look forward to many more years of growing with you and writing profitable business. And just can't wait to hear some of the success stories that come out of you being on the podcast, because I know there's tens of thousands of agents out there listening right now that are thankful you were on today.
I appreciate it, man. And thanks to everyone for watching. I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely, brother. Take care, man. Have a good one.
Yeah,
Everybody
man, you
else, we'll
too.
catch you next time. See ya.